call to order. Welcome. We're at the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority Board of Directors meeting. It's December 16th at 3 o'clock, and we're in the Sierra room at Carson City Community Center. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Trish Turnoweth.
Here.
Mike Riggs.
Here.
Mike Jones.
Here.
Mike Santos.
Here.
Stacy Giomi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, can everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for any public comment. Public's invited to come speak anything that's interesting to this board or has an interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Possible action approval of the minutes for the November 18th, 2019 CTA board meeting. Does anyone have any revisions or corrections to the minutes?
No.
If no, can I get...
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item's adoption of the agenda. I don't see any reason to move anything around. I know you have some late material that'll come in during your presentation. David will keep the agenda as adopted. For presentation only, presentation of the 2019 Carson City Off-Road. Todd, welcome. Yeah. Thank you for coming today and giving us an overview of how this year went and hopefully how you hope to see next year.
Good.
Okay. Yeah.
Microphone.
Check, check. Is that better? Okay. Board members, thank you for your time today. Here, as you mentioned, to report on the 2019 Carson City Off-Road. A little bit of background, the Carson City Off-Road is one of 4 events in the Epic Ride series. The Whiskey Off-Road is in Prescott, Arizona. Kicks off the season each year in April. The Grand Junction Off-Road is in Colorado. Can you go back a couple slides, please? One more. And then the following the Grand Junction Off-Road in May is the Carson City Off-Road in June. And then we wrap the season with our championship event in Bentonville, Arkansas in October. So here we are in December, and we have wrapped up our 2019 season and are barreling into 2020. We can go to the next slide. So the Epic Ride series, as I mentioned, it's 4 events at the moment. Our plans are to fill in the months of July, August, and September between Carson City and Bentonville with additional events throughout the country. Our tagline, where beginners, seasoned amateurs, and the world's fastest pros come together to enjoy 3 days of mountain bike culture, live music, and world-class single track. Ultimately, it's an event, mountain bike event series that welcomes all types of people and all levels of mountain biker, from beginner to the world's fastest pros. What that really means to our host communities, Carson City Off-Road is a year-round international marketing vehicle that generates millions of impressions and culminates each event weekend each year with people at your doorstep spending money. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Who we are at Epic Rides, the people behind producing the Carson City Off-Road and our other events. We're 9 full-time employees, 8 part-time. We have 45 seasonal staff members. We have an army of volunteers, about 150 to 200 volunteers per event of the 6 events that we have. We've been at this a little while, over 2 decades now, going into our 21st year. And we have 6 major mountain bike events, the 4 that I mentioned on that first slide, plus the 24 Hours in the Old Pueblo, which is our original event. It's the biggest 24-hour mountain bike event in the country, one of the biggest in the world in Tucson. And then the Tour of the White Mountains. And we're a relatively seasoned event management team. With that comes our ability to work with different agencies and land managers to piece together great mountain bike experiences and to showcase communities that we operate in. This slide here just speaks to who us in this room, what we're doing, what we set out to do, or your predecessors 4 or 5 years ago when we originally met to produce the Carson City Off-Road. So we've been on a path. I guess we first spoke with the CTA, between the CTA and Epic Rides, when Carson City was going through a rebranding campaign. And we got out ahead of it and initiated the relationship. And part of that rebranding campaign was to feature Carson City's outdoor enthusiast opportunities. And to use mountain biking as the vehicle to do that is why we set out to produce the Carson City Off-Road together. Our goal for the event was to drive the registration up to 2,000 participants in the first 5 years. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but we had some setbacks. We had some weather that we didn't anticipate. We, on an annual basis, attract about 2,500 people so far down to downtown Carson City for event weekend. And we continue to drive forward the reputation of the community as a world-class mountain bike destination and make it known to the people in the region and beyond that people can come to Carson City to mountain bike just like they can go to Tahoe or other areas of NorCal that Downeyville and so forth that are also on their radar when they come to this region. The event is designed to drive revenues into your community. Carson City should be the biggest benefactor financially from the event each year and has been. And it's also a fundraising event. So each year's raised, or the last 3 years have raised just about $20,000, a little bit over $20,000 per event for organizations in your community. So that heat map down there just speaks to the reach of our audience. That is just one pin per city. I mean, we've got lots of. If we gave you every pin for every person, it would just look like a modeled map. But it represents, if you can, for context, when we send out a newsletter, that's basically the footprint of who's receiving it within the United States, which is the majority of it. And of course, those are all core mountain bikers that are represented. So we've grown to become a very effective tool to reach out to the core mountain biking audience. Some industry trends really quick. Bike tourism accounts for some serious spending power. $83 billion in trip-related spending, and another $97 billion in retail spending. So it's a heavy hitter when it comes to the economy and among the outdoor enthusiast population and how they spend money and which subsets of the outdoor enthusiast population that spend more so than others. I'm sure it doesn't hurt that bicycles are more than a pair of tennis shoes. So it tends to skew our spending a little bit higher. Something else that's notable and has been since we started this relationship and continues to be very pronounced is youth participation in high school mountain biking. It's really high school and middle school mountain biking now. Between 2016 and 2017, there's a middle school and high school mountain biking movement nationally called NICA, the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, NICA. And they grew 35% in 1 year. And they continue to grow at a very, very high rate. They are, in essence, what does this mean? It means that mountain biking is now in middle schools and high schools and competing against stick and ball sports. I don't know the last time any other sport got the opportunity to go into that space and compete. And different from triathlon or road cycling, the guy in the funny shorts that we were talking about earlier over lunch, mountain bikers can look cool. We have suspension on our bikes. We wear baggy clothing sometimes, not all the time. So when a kid in middle school or high school is, impressing upon their friends, they can get by as a cool mountain biker. So it's a pretty exciting time for the sport because there's a real sea change happening in the youth level. And whereas cycling has always been a mid-30s entry, because people finally get disposable income and can afford a $5,000 bike, now there's tons of companies going after the $700 mountain bike for the middle school and high school kid so that they can have a healthy activity that's not putting their cranium at risk with concussions in football and stuff like that. So the sport's, it's got a nice trajectory to it. Who is the person that we're bringing to your community? It's a 36-year-old male and female. If we had to hone in on one individual, we are just about 83-85% male, 17% female. Many of them are married. They have careers. They have a nice household income, $100,000 or more. There's actually, I think, about a 15 or 20% piece that is up over 200,000. And they're having success in their life. So different from, say, a mountain bike festival where it's show up and ride a bunch of bikes, but there's no real start and finish line. Your event and the Carson City Off-Road and our events that we produce, they all have a start and a finish line. And so it tends to skew just a little bit higher than the happy-go-lucky person, whether they're a mountain biker or a completely different audience or genre completely, because they know how to set a goal and achieve a goal. And this event then plays a more important role in their life than just showing up. And so you're getting people that are making good decisions, whether it's on behalf of their family or in the interest of their career. And that's who you're getting in your community when the Carson City Off-Road shows up. Before we go into attendance, we've been cruising along. Any questions so far? Okay. All right.
Road biking is declining.
Oof. It's rough.
And mountain biking is growing, 3%. Oh. Thank you. I reminded Todd, and now I don't follow. But overall, then, that tells me there's kind of a decrease in overall cycling. And your goal is to get to 2,000 ridership, and I know that was an issue one year because you grew, in 17 you grew, I think 34%, I think the slide said, and then 18 it was down and that was weather?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 19 was, I don't know, how did that compare to 17, 19?
It's funny you should ask. It's right there.
It was down, or,
So 17 we were up 34%.
right.
From the first year. Our original growth trajectory, to take a step back, was 600, 900, 1,200, 1,500, 2,000. And to your question, we started off very strong at the 600 mark, grew to 900 in 2017. And then in 2018, we had an epic snow year, the most snow on record since the original year of record keeping. So we didn't anticipate that. And so we ended up doing a lapped format for the event. So instead of one big loop where people got to ride up Kings Canyon Road, up North Canyon Road to the Flume Trail or to the Rim Trail and see panoramic views of Lake Tahoe, that was not available to us. So we did a lapped version of the course. They did 2 or 3 laps. And it was extraordinarily hot too. And it wound up being, we had a huge no-show rate because a lot of people that travel from outside of the community wanted the panoramic views and weren't going to have them. And then it also stifled our growth going into the next year, into 2018. So we were down 1%. It was a small victory that we didn't lose more traction and didn't go backwards more. And then we had a great year in 2018 as far as conditions went. And then this year we had, again, another crazy snow year. And so after announcing the event and opening registration, we made the decision, instead of doing multiple laps, of changing the event date, which took a tremendous amount of coordination from everybody. And anyone that had a hand in that, we appreciate it dearly. And so then we ended up only growing by about 4%. Because underneath that 4% number is about 60 to 70 refunds, as well as about a month and a half of registration performance that was stale because everyone was waiting to see if we would make a decision on whether or not we were going to run laps or delay the event. So I don't doubt that we can make a run at the next step function at 1,200 riders next year. I feel very bullish toward it, to be perfectly honest. But we've just had a couple of years here where here we are getting acquainted with the market, and we're, we've lost a couple of 50-50s.
All right. Thanks.
Todd, do you think moving it up a couple weeks from where it was is going to help move that to 1,200 riders to get that registration up?
I do. Yeah, I think we're now positioned at the last weekend of June, and from our experiences so far, that would suggest that that's adequate time for us to have at least a great deal of confidence towards our Plan B course, which is what we ran this year, as well as to give the consumer confidence from an outside perspective on whether or not they can sign up early for the event and get excited for it. Even though it's only a couple weeks later than typical, I think it's a very meaningful couple of weeks around here.
Have you had positive feedback on that from the participants from this year, knowing that next year is going to be at the end of June?
Yeah. Yeah. So to that end, we had 941 total registered. We had 800 at the start lines, so about a 15% no-show. We had almost 30% respond to our survey, which is a great sample size for confidence in the quality of the data. Estimated total bike event attendees is 2,500. Of that, 2,200 were rider parties. And then you've got our sponsors and media and volunteers and local support and so forth that ratcheted up to the 2,500 number. Event health, we've got a 35% retention rate year over year from 2018. It's a healthy event. It's smack in the middle of what we consider healthy. 30% is bad. That would be a really poor retention rate, and it wouldn't show favorably on the future of the event. 40% means that we're really running and gunning at that point. And I think with a couple years of consistently good weather, we should be knocking on 40% retention rates or more. 58% were first-time participants, so that suggests that our marketing efforts are successful. We're getting a lot of new people in the door. It's encouraging. 85% of the registrants were from outside of Carson City. That's a good number for us. Our objective is to drive your economy. We do that best by bringing people from outside the community. And at 85% from outside the community, that means that they're spending some money while they're here to support their time spent here and to have the experience that we hope for them to have. 61% were from outside Nevada. Part of that's because we're so darn close to California, but that's strong. That's really good. 252 cities represented, 26 states, 9 countries. And these events are designed to be very strong regional events that pull from all over the country and outside the country. But the majority of the people attending are from the region. So they're road tripping in and so forth. That said, we always get asked, how many did the other events that we produce? So that's what these, the Whiskey Off-Road is WAR, Grand Junction Off-Road is GJOR, Oz Trails is in Bentonville, Arkansas, OTOR. So that's the crossover between the events. The majority of those numbers are the pro riders. They're heavily incentivized to do our events. There's big cash purses, the biggest in the world. And so it's safe to assume that, out of the 64 that did all 4, 60 of them are pros. Just to give context for what those numbers represent. So looking at the bike event visitors specifically, this is out-of-town guests. So 2,100 people from out of town, 1,200 stayed overnight. That means that 816 were day visitors. Average nights stayed in Carson City, 2.5. It's not uncommon for the pros to arrive early because there's a lot of money on the line and they can't pre-ride the whole course in one shot without exhausting themselves, so they'll spend a few days pre-riding. It's also not uncommon when we've got this emerging middle school and high school programming for families to show up early, make a vacation out of it, and to stay a couple days on either side of event weekend. 54% stayed 2 nights or more. That's a healthy visit. Accommodations in Carson City, estimated total nights booked was 1,252. And that equates to 1,068 estimated hotel room nights. Did we get backwards on that? Oh, of the 1,252 booked, 1,068 were hotel room nights and 184 were rental property nights. Something we are seeing in other markets, your average room night for booking is contained here. And as the event gets bigger and presumably the hoteliers will increase their rates a little bit, it's not uncommon for us to see a migration into the rental properties. So we've seen rental properties in all of our other markets increase this year against hotels. This one has stayed relatively consistent. So accommodations by type, 34% in hotels, 5% in rental properties. A pretty good number of RV and tent campers, 15%. The really interesting one here is the non-resident but did not stay overnight in Carson City, 39%. We'd like to do a deeper dive into that number next year in our survey tool, but we assume that they're going to Tahoe or going to Reno. So there's some leakage that maybe we can capture, or maybe as other hotels come online, it creates it fills a segment or something that gets their attention. Arrival method: 91% drove, 9% flew. Those 9% that flew, most of them are flying into RNO. 38% of non-resident attendees were first-time visitors to Carson City. Oftentimes they came here purely for the event, and if it didn't exist, they might not have ever come to Carson City. Yeah, 96% came solely for the event. And then that's a sampling of the hotels that people booked at. And an Airbnb, I think, Bliss Bungalow. Any questions on this slide? Okay. Our pro category, like I mentioned, it has has the biggest cash purse in the world. It's just under $170,000 across the 4 events. We had 467 pros in the series for the 4 events this year. This event had 94. Again, we had a little bit of fallout when we changed the date, so it would have been reasonable to expect it to be well over 100. But with the date change, some had already committed to other events for that weekend. And 83 out of the 94 that registered started. And that's it's a really strong pro start on a percentage basis. Cash purse, it's a $30,000 backcountry purse. So the Sunday event is for them, it's $30,000 and it's split equally, male and female. We've always split equally in our purse for the men and the women, and it's very appreciated across the pro category. The Fat Tire Crit on Friday night has a $2,000 purse, and those events give them points that at the end of the season they're racing for the overall, which is a $10,000 purse. A couple of quotes here. Russell Finsterwald, who won the overall, was speaking to Velo News, which is one of the medias that attended the event, and did a fair bit of editorial on it. And he was, he exclaimed he was pretty excited to have to be at an Epic Ride Series event and how it brings everyone together. Riley Amos is an up-and-coming junior who landed on his first podium at an Epic Rides event, and obviously holds it in a pretty high esteem, I suppose. We will see a lot of Riley in the future. I mean, I think he's like 18. Yeah, strong kid. One
real quick question about the pro registrations. What's the average of the 4 events? What's the average pro registration?
Probably about 110, 115.
Okay.
Whiskey and Grand are up around 130 these days. And I want to say Bentonville was around 110. Yeah. Another point to make about that pro category, the world is overrun with social media and influencers and impressions and engagement and everything else, and we'll talk about that a little bit. That pro category is all influencers. So you've got 100 influencers having an amazing time here, feeling respected, getting an equal purse, getting the biggest purse of the year, purses of the year at the stop. It means a lot to them. So it makes it really easy for them to talk positively about their experience, to tag you, and to reference the community to their fellowship. Who are those people in their daily life? They're the guy on the block or the girl on the block that when the neighbor says, I want to buy a bike, what should I get? That's the one they go to. They get asked a lot of questions. So they're a walking, talking billboard for you after they have a good experience here.
Just one quick, another question on that. Have we gone down in the pro registrations, or have we gone up, or have we stayed steady?
We took a step back this year, and it was purely because we changed the date. Yeah. I'm very confident that we'll see a bounce back next year. Yeah. What the Epic Ride Series is doing is dusting off the sport of mountain biking. So it went through a very, just like road cycling is now, it went through a very down time. And this series is what's revitalizing the sport for backcountry or cross-country mountain biking. So the loyalty we're getting by making decisions that are favorable to the participant, which is purely customer service and what everyone should do, it brings with it a lot of loyalty. And the pros really appreciate our series. And again, the host communities, and they've really learned to play well, understanding the host community's role in each event production. Yeah. So speaking to the estimated direct spending of the event, this is just for the bike event attendees, okay? So looking at a 4-year summary, it's about a $2.5 million spend, of which about $2.2 million came from out-of-town guests. And included in there is about $80,000 of donations as well that the event has put back into your community. Any questions? Okay, video. So looking at 2019, we estimate about a $700,000 direct spend. These are the different categories that we collected information on. What the $700,000 spend boils down to is about $27,000 in taxes collected by the municipality and $17,000 collected by the state. And there's that $23,000 in donations from this year's event. And that's a few of the organizations that received a portion of that $23,000.
Can I just ask you a question about that? All
Yeah.
of those are not in Carson. So were any donations made to local charities?
Are you looking at your hard copy?
Mm-hmm.
That was a typo, and I apologize. We do these
Sorry.
reports. Yeah, I'm sorry. We do these reports for each host community, and that was legacy information from a completely different community.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of my,
It was highlighted.
that's a very fair question.
he kept talking about local contributions, and I thought, gosh, last I heard, we weren't a suburb of Arizona.
I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Muscle powered.
That's
The
good. I
Boys
got
and
it.
Girls Club
Thank
here
you.
in Carson City. Yeah. Technically, TAMBA is not a Carson City organization, but I do believe that there are members in both. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about social media a second ago. Social media is a beast. It's a multi-headed beast. This is purely what we did. This doesn't include all those pros tagging you or the influencers or the mentions in podcasts and everything else. I mean, it is the tentacles that these events end up casting out there and that just grow year after year after year and get deeper in this little world that we live in. is phenomenal. So this is purely a baseline. This is what we did in-house, marketing the event, marketing your community, marketing our sponsors. All right. And it's even limited to the December to July window, even though there's activity year round, right? That's sort of snowballing. So we picked up just over 1,000 new followers on Facebook this year. We had almost 4,000 reactions to the posts during this time, 3,800. We spooled up just about 500,000 in reach during that period of time. And across the different social media platforms that we have, that was over 33,000 engagements and over almost 2,500 likes. The Carson City Facebook page has 2,300 followers right now. And it's got an annual reach of about 30,000. So look at it as like placing an ad in a publication, right? Except for people can engage with the ad and they can click through and they can learn more. And it's a new message all the time, that gets to drill deeper and deeper into your community. The Epic Rides Facebook page, which is not the same as the Carson page, right? Carson City is purely focused on the Carson City Off-Road page is purely focused on the Carson City event. The Epic Rides page is focused on all of our events, and it's an anchor type tool to use. But it continues to have a good following, and you continue to get the benefit of it. At just over 15,000 followers and a 85,000 annual reach. And our Instagram page continues to get stronger at over 17,000 followers. I think we're actually over 18,000 now. Doing the math on those impressions and engagements, it turns into about $25,000 in social media value for Carson City. Not included in that $25,000 is this thing on the bottom left. So we worked with a company, Lydia, Dave, I don't know if you guys are familiar with them, but they're called Genius Monkey. And this is an additional, very significant ad spend, but we knew we were up against a changed date, and we wanted to explore some new marketing to see what we could do to make sure we closed the gap. And it's a very spendy type of thing to do, but it seemed to have worked. So that is separate from separate from newsletters, it's separate from social media. But working with them, this ad was pushed out and accumulated actually it's an ad set. This is like one of 12 different ads that went out. It spooled up about 1.2, almost 1.3 million impressions. And Carson City is, prevalent. And we got over 4,000 clicks. So it drove over 4,000 people to our webpage. And that type of ad placement, for context, is we want this to go to people that bought something for $60 or more in the last 2 weeks at a bike shop in these zip codes. That's how targeted that is. It's kind of fun to play with. Any questions on this one? Okay. Earned media. So it's important to read this little intro. Digital marketing and social media continue to evolve, so has earned media. Earned media for the it's a lost edit, I apologize. For the Carson City Off-Road can be harnessed in several ways and found on multiple platforms. So these are all samples of different places where media picked up the Carson City Off-Road. And whereas the Endurance Business News feed sees 30,000 people a day globally, and they're dropping press release or picking up press releases that we drop and so forth. Kate Courtney is a world champion. She came and raced at the Carson City Off-Road, and she has an Instagram following of almost 330,000 people. So it seems reasonable to consider her media too when she's here talking about your community as an influencer, even though technically she's not media, right? So that's the point we're getting to with it's a changing landscape. There's also mentions frequently on Trainer Road and MTB Podcast, and our friend Lance Armstrong with The Move is always nice and mentions our events too. So we're including you in the conversation. The name of the event is intentionally the Carson City Off-Road, and in that way, every time it's mentioned, your community is mentioned. And so when someone like an influencer like Lance chooses to talk about Epic Rides in our series and what he thinks it's doing for cycling, then it's not uncommon for you guys to be a benefactor of that. Any questions? Okay. So additional visits play a key role in our events. As we pointed out, a lot of the people are not from your community, and it's not uncommon for them to come and pre-ride the course. As I mentioned earlier, the pros will show up days early because that's their window of time to come and pre-ride. Other people that might live within 2-3 hours of the community might plan to show up a week, a month beforehand, or months beforehand in the fall because they know they're going to do it in the spring. And they'll go out and pre-ride the course to get familiar with it because there is no substitute for a pre-ride. Knowing where the top of the hill is or what's around the corner, when you should suffer, when you should recover, those are the things that contribute to a successful day on the bike. And so that turns into multiple visits to your community. So we estimate the return visitor value at about $100,000 from this year's event. So total,
Todd, I just wanted to point out, if you go back on that slide, just for Chair Jones, he happens to be in that photo, if you see him standing up there with Lydia. Of course, I'm behind and off to the right and very blurry, but Mike's in the photo.
You guys on the pirate ship?
Yes.
this is the concert Saturday night. Keller Williams was our headliner. So the 2019 Carson City Off-Road, what was it worth this year? And certainly in rough numbers, $700,000 in direct spending, $26,000 in social media, another $96,000 in return visits. So just over $820,000 for the year in value for your community. Any questions? Okay. A bit of feedback from Jim Phelan at the Fox Brew Pub. The event delivers the highest revenue intake over 4 days for the year at the Fox Brew Pub. We experienced a 25 to 35% increase in sales over the course of the 4 days in comparison to similar weeks and events from May to September, which are our busiest months. So that is exactly what we want to hear, to be perfectly honest. I want to know that the mountain bikers came and had a good time, that they enjoyed your community, and that our sponsors had fun being here and getting out in front of the participants. But a really important one to us is that your merchants are making money, because that's what goes back to your tax base, and that's what's justifying us staying, right? We all have to be winning on this for us to continue doing it, and that's how we win together. So it's good to see those bits and pieces of feedback when they come our way. So something else that we survey for is, did people go out and ride other trails besides the course? Because we know that it's very common for them to show up early and stay late. And as much as for many of them, they really do just want to survive and finish the Carson City Off-Road, a lot of them want to come here and ride as much as humanly possible over 3 or 4 or 5 days before they go home. And so they'll go out and they'll ride other trails in the area. So this is an opportunity to get feedback on the health of your community and where there might be opportunities for the person that's visiting at random, not here on event weekend, to have a heightened experience. Or for them to go home to their friends and say, hey, I never got lost. It's a great place to go, right? Versus I was lost the whole time, bring a good map. So your experience identifying alternative trails, over half gave it a 5 rating. Experience navigating the trails, which is a very important piece. Again, like getting to ride the trails that they heard were good and wanted to go out and ride. 64% gave it a 5 rating. And then the quality of trails, maybe most importantly, right? That there's really good trails here for people to show up and ride. That makes it destination worthy. And we know there's good trails here. That's why we're here. But 73% gave you guys a 5 rating. So that's really favorable. That's a tip of the cap to Muscle Powered and the collaboration between your community and empowering them, acquiring land to continue to perpetuate trails and make them a priority. That's where those results come from. So objectives for next year, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but a very important objective is to grow it to 1,200. Something that is due to come online in the next couple of years is the Capital Connector Trail. We've been hearing of this mythical trail for a while, but it sounds like it's truly moving forward at this point. I know that the CTA has contributed some support to making it happen. And although it might not be on tap in 2020, it sounds like it will be ready it will be available for us to use in 2021. That trail will be a game changer for your community. It's going to connect from the Tahoe Rim Trail down to Ash to Kings. And if you can imagine that, you're coming from up above Marlette Lake all the way down to Ash to Kings. There's a whole lot of either suffering going up it or a whole lot of fun coming down it. And that amount of relief is substantial, it's not common, and it's destination worthy. So this is an opportunity for us to really put the event in use for your benefit and to show people, a large audience of people, that this trail exists. And then that will then seed the behavior and the activity on it going forward. And it's hopefully just a very high traffic trail year round at that point, or at least not in the snow months. So growing the event to 1,200 in 2020. Always work to enhance the out-of-town guest experience by giving them a close emotional connection with your community, showing them the aspects or the character qualities of your community that you most want your visitors to see, to give them a good experience. So we want to be a vehicle to do that. Evolve our media coverage, which is something we're knee deep in right now, which goes back to that whole, the landscape is changing. It's important that we change with it. And then to further cultivate the rider's experience. And that goes back to incorporating in new trails that are introduced and existing trails that are maintained and enhanced in special ways and stuff. Thank you.
Todd, are mountain bikers, are they planners? It seems like they would be. When is the rush for registration, or do they wait to see, when the events during the year are happening to decide which events? When will you know? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So we did something different for next year already, and we opened registration on Black Friday. And we actually spooled up a lot of registration for next year. We're going to do another promo starting this Sunday, a loyalty promo for people that have ridden in our events in the last 5 years. I think, so what happens is we get a big rush when we open, and then we tend to get, a steady drip of registration, and we have registration processing fee increases. So the event costs $130, and in that one, it's a flat fee. So in that includes credit card processing, a donation to local beneficiaries, as well as registration fees. So that $130 will go up 2 months out to $140 and 1 month out to $150. When we go into those deadlines is when we see the greatest registration push. So I wish I could tell you, 2 months from now, we're going to know where we're at. But having seen already what we did come in from that little 4-day promotion that we did from Black Friday to Cyber Monday, we're off to a really good start. Yeah.
Yes, Stacy?
Dave, what's our financial contribution?
We sit around $80,000 to $90,000, including the contract plus the hotel costs that we pick up, the band costs, and some other miscellaneous costs for the event.
Okay. And is there a cost to the city as well? I mean, a direct cost, a direct feed of cash? Obviously, there's support costs.
There are support costs, yeah, and talking
But outside
with
of that?
Nancy, there's potentially another $80,000 to $90,000 that the city puts in when you look at all the personnel-related costs or staffing.
I'm just talking about direct contribution. So on our side, we're at about 80,000
Yeah.
to 90,000.
Yes,
And the city's cost is all borne in
primarily.
in expenses, not in direct cash.
Correct, that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
No, just want to say a great presentation. You got a lot of numbers here. Looking forward to seeing what this year has to offer. And David, on the event feedback, do we send something out to our local businesses and asking them for feedback like this?
James, actually, we did engage on the restaurant side, and I don't know, James, if you want to mention the feedback that we did receive, or just touch on that a little bit, but we did hit up a few restaurants just to assess how the weekend went for them.
James Alanoa, Events and Sales Manager. We did engage with a lot of the restaurants here in town, and most of the feedback were positive. Unfortunately, the data is actually shipped out to Brian in our data guy that we're working with in Florida, so I don't have anything to actually report. He'll most likely have more data for you about that, but one-on-ones with a lot of lodging properties or restaurant properties were very favorable in terms of the event itself in the weekend. So I don't have any specific data to report on that at the moment.
So do we also reach out to some of the retailers downtown?
That we can, moving forward, absolutely. After next year's event, yeah, absolutely look at doing that.
So just a question on the tent camping, where is this happening? Was this the event this year that was in Mills Park as well with tent camping? Was there any fee for that? Or did we just loan the park?
More or less, yeah, they didn't pay any fees to put their campers in at the Mills Park, no.
Is that a plan moving forward for that to happen?
There can certainly be a fee.
Well, as a lodging property, that hurts my property and what I get from this event. So I just am curious how that's going to move forward.
We can certainly look at putting something into place, or, obviously, I would love to see everybody staying at a hotel, at a motel, given that that's how we're funding this, is with lodging tax revenue, of course.
Anything else for Todd? Well, Todd, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come and report. And I think the purpose of this is to make sure we continue to have a healthy relationship. I think you mentioned it at the start, that it has to work for everybody to be success. And I think we're on a start to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you.
Moving on to item 8, marketing update from KPS 3.
Chair Jones, if I can just set this up while they get the computer plugged in. So the presentation, we've got two parts to this. First part is the website, of course. 2 weeks from today, we will go live with the new website. So we're just going to show the board and everybody where we're at in the dev server environment, what the new website is going to look like in a couple of weeks. And then the second part of the presentation, we will get into the logo lockup. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Andy Walden.
Andy Walden, for the record. Well, thanks everyone for having us over here today. We have some really exciting things to share, which I'm very excited to share. So we are going to go through the website. This is not it. This is the current website. So we have the new website that we will go over, and we'll go through the main sections. So just to let you know, we are going to use the homepage as somewhat of our hub, and we're going to go off to the different sections just so you can kind of see some of those other areas and how they'll look once we go into launch. All right, so with that, perfect. All right, so this is the first impression that you will get once you go to the eventual visit carsoncity.com. So this is collective footage that we shot just in this fall. So the beautiful colors we were able to capture and be able to show the diversity of everything that Carson City has to offer. So one of the things that I really enjoy as well as part of this is this slideshow right here that highlights the different sections that people can see. So when a potential visitor is like, where is this? They can then click on more details to find exactly where that is so they can explore that section for themselves. So really excited to see some of that B-roll footage come to life. And then as we're going, and because we're up at the top, I did want to highlight our navigation menu.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or just a comment? Is there a way to slow it down? I find that, I mean, it's just for me, but other people I've talked to on another project I'm working on, completely unrelated, with the quick changes like that. I don't know, I just don't think people get a sense of a chance to really appreciate it. So I don't know if that mucks it up or if, what you think of that, but, and it would probably look funny because then people wouldn't be walking in real time, but just something to think about. I find the transitions to be, it's too quick. You almost don't get a chance to catch a breath and settle into the scene. Does that make sense? So I don't know, maybe you could, pause it or something in between, so that you have a chance to, like, even stop it for a second, so you have a chance to sort of take in that view like that. But just as you're starting to take in the view, bam, it goes away. So that's just feedback. I don't know if that makes sense or anybody else feels the same way.
And I can speak to that as well, Jenny Hubert for the record. So we know that when people do visit the website that they're action-based. So while we do want people to hang out and basically watch this beautiful video that we've put together, we know that they are going to be looking for something specific. So that's why we do have the controls on there as well. I think that we can absolutely look into slowing it down. That may require us to take one of those locations off because we also want to be cognizant of load times. And sometimes when we do get a very long video up there, it can tend to load a little bit slower.
Well, I just now saw the pause, so given that that's there, I'm okay with it. I didn't really notice it till you pointed that out. So.
And it is small. We
Yeah.
could look into even just slightly increasing the size of that so we can.
No, I think that's
people are
good,
more
because it
aware.
does give you a second then to stop it and actually look at the picture and, thank you.
All right. So yes, we do have the pause and play, so thank you for highlighting that, Jenna. As we're going into the navigation, this is a mega nav, so what this will allow people to do is get to the content they want through the navigation, but it also gives us the opportunity to highlight certain sections of the site. So this may continually change, depend on season, as well as popularity of content. If we see people going to specific content, we want to may make it featured in this area. So now scrolling below, the next section highlights things to do, where to stay, and where to dine. I'm not going to spend too much time here because we're going to go over this section in detail a little bit later. But then we jump into the itineraries. And so we have the itineraries, which were a lot of this was based off of the pillars that we defined in our guiding principles with outdoor, family-friendly, historical, and arts and culture. And so when a person goes in and wants to select outdoor, they will then go to their outdoor itinerary. And here they have the ability to switch through either a day trip or a 3-day trip. And so this will highlight and say that, mainly here's where you can enjoy breakfast, here's here's a great trail to be able to enjoy for the morning. And then as you're heading into the afternoon, we obviously have a lot of wonderful golf courses that people can go to. And then as they're going into the evening, they can finish their day either going to the restaurants or the hot springs. And so this is a similar layout to the 3-day with some additional content to be able to fill that itinerary. So moving back into the homepage, now I'm going to go over to the Nevada experience and really Carson City as I would call it the central hub of Northern Nevada. As we see, we're within 30 minutes of these wonderful destinations. And so having your stay here absolutely makes sense. You're only 25 minutes away from Reno. You're 20 minutes away from historic Virginia City. You're 70 minutes away, which is the furthest one away from the beautiful Fallon, or you're 25 minutes away from the majestic Lake Tahoe, or going over to our friendly neighbors to Carson Valley. And so this really highlights why people should stay here because of all the great places that are close by alongside Carson City. Then looking at Carson City specifically, we do have featured attractions. And so this section here can be updated as needed with the different attractions. So we can highlight the historic railways, the Nevada State Museum, or the Capitol building. And so when they select the Capitol building, they will then go to a detail page that allows people to show allows people to find the location, hours, perhaps even the history of the Nevada Capitol building, all the way into Battleborn Hall. And so each one of these attractions has a page that's built for themselves to be able to highlight that content. All right. With the next section, this is the Navigate Like a Nevadan area. So the idea here is that we will be able to play a video that really interviews the local and really gets that personality to be able to show all the great points about what Carson City has to offer. So this one is going to be, we've already shot the footage. It's ready to go. Essentially, we just have a few more tweaks to add to it, but it'll be ready for launch. And that's going to be our own Woody Davis that is going to be the first one to be able to be in that spot. And so him as the tour guide made sense for him to be the first one for launch.
Andy, if I can just clarify, he's a wonderful tour guide at the Capitol. He is a character, let me tell you that right now. So we use him when we bring in our international groups, or if we brought media over there. He's one of several, but he's just a great character. I think embodies everything about Carson City. So.
Mm-hmm. Then we move into the shared experiences. So this is a lot of the user-generated content, but this is the @Carson City Instagram feed. And so this highlights obviously the diversity of all the Instagram shots that the team here has been able to provide. And so this pulls in from the outdoor life to the Polar Express to friends and family to historical attractions. This shows a wide range of everything that Carson City has that people want to see, specifically on social. Then moving into some of our curated content, these are the featured articles, and this can be switched out, again, based on seasonality or on upcoming events or what have you, but this is really the blog and news content. And so if we were to go look at the haunted history of Carson City, this news article in particular highlights really the Carson City's ghost walk, some great photography here, and then moves into some of the featured spots along the ghost walk, along some of the history behind these attractions. And then as we're finishing up, we want the user to continue their journey in on the website. And so we do have featured and related articles at the bottom that, because this is a historic piece, these are more historic blogs that are related to this other blog. So hopefully this will also then, after they're finished with this, will allow them to then continue their journey and read some additional content. Then we jump into the event section. So these are the next most popular events from the tourism perspective. This content is still being populated. So this is some of the highlighted events, but there'll be more to come on this side. However, we have the Polar Express, the coin press demonstrations, Nevada Day, and this can be handpicked as well. So once we go into something like the Polar Express, this will then go into the event detail page, which shows admission costs to where the event is and then the website. And then from there, they can find the details needed to be able to find more information about the event. And so that is really the tour of the homepage, but I did want to also cover some additional sections. One I know that is really important is going to be the places to stay. And so this is something that where all the hotels, the motels, and the RV parks will be able to find their specific location listed. And in the next phase, they'll be able to also be able to manage this content directly. However, if we go in and we look at the detail page, for example, the Gold Dust West Casino, we have where they can find their Google rating. So this is their rating based off of Google My Business. So this could be turned on and turned off. This is the location, who to call, which will then, if they're on their mobile, will allow them to call directly, their website, and then their Facebook presence. With that, we also, so there's their website, and then we also have a booking URL. So if their website has a specific place where they can book, that can be differentiated so they can quickly then hopefully book their location or their hotel. And then with that, underneath, there's also nearby attractions, hopefully allowing them to see the proximity of some other great places that are around that location that they can go check out as well. The food and drink section is very similar, at least on terms of the listings page where we have the food and drink. So you'll see the different types of places that people can go to for the wide range of dining options that we have. They can filter down by option, they can filter in by search, and then find exactly what they're looking for the night. All right. So 2 more pages that I wanted to cover. The featured events page, we know that this is a really important page as we're helping build up our presence for events and getting more people to come to them. So again, we have the featured events section, and then we have the fuller section of all the upcoming events, where again, they have the ability to select, for example, they may be coming in 3 weeks, they could see what events that are going to be around them, the categories of the events, and then if they're looking for something specific, they can search for those via here. And then the last piece that I wanted to touch on was just the things to do. And the reason why I wanted to leave with this is that this will be a great place that you can then send people to directly, whether that be through paid ads, as an alternative to the homepage as well. And then hopefully this will also start ranking on search just because of the wide range of content. But I'll go through a lot of these. For example, our outdoor rec showing the diversity of bike riding to the snow-capped mountains, to river rafting, to fishing. So I think that this is a great introduction to show you how many things that we cover and things to do. And then moving quickly into the wonderful things that we have to offer from the arts and culture side. Then jumping into family activities and highlighting things that if people are bringing little ones that are going to be kid-friendly. Museums, love this shot of the Nevada State Museum. And being able to look at all the great and different types of museums that we have to offer. Downtown shopping and the walkability of our downtown and how quickly and easily it is to get around. The option for obviously gaming, and so people can find where they can go to be able to find the great casinos that we have. Obviously the unique way that we are able to offer historic railways, and then day trips for the cities that surround us. And then we get more into the sections that we've covered with itineraries, events, and attractions. And so this one in the attraction side is actually really great as well. So people can also find what they may want to look at. So from outdoor rec and looking at railroads, there's a lot of different options where they can basically find their own map of where all these attractions live. And I think that is pretty much it from the website side. So right now we're currently working, both teams are really working hard to make sure that we have the content ready, and then fixing up any last items, but everything is go for December 30th for our launch.
Yeah, and I just want to extend my gratefulness to both teams. I mean, Lydia and with Jess on board, they're tearing it up 24, 25, 26 hours a day, along with the developers on the KPS3 team and these 3 as well. So a lot of work is taking place right now, or these last few weeks and over the next 2 weeks. So
yeah, really excited for that launch date, though. It'll be great to see this come to life.
No, I think where we've moved in the last few weeks, a lot of work. And I really enjoy the website, how interactive it is. That wasn't the way it was 3 months ago. No matter what you're into, you can kind of find your way in there. And to me, that's what we were looking for. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent.
I too love the photography. I mean, it really brings our community to life, and I think that's very appealing to people. David, how are we managing, or what's the intent on managing the hotels that go on the website, the restaurants that go on the website? What's just the 30,000-foot view of how that's going to get managed?
So right now, until we get the .biz launched, all the content, everything you see going on is being handled by the staff, so by the team. So we've ported over the content, and if I mix this up, you guys can correct me, from the old app. So all the points of interest, all of the information on hotels, restaurants, we've basically imported that into develop the website out. And then the next phase of this, when we get the .biz site up and running, we'll be doing training with Jess on board, setting up training for retail shops, for restaurants, for
I guess what I'm
hotels.
wondering is in the interim, how do we make sure we're not missing a restaurant? How do we make sure that we're getting them all? That's the first question. The second question is, are we consciously making a decision to include the monthlies on that, as I saw a couple of them up there? And should we be? So
Well-
there's three questions, actually.
Okay.
Go.
Let me tackle the monthly piece. So part of the issue is there are times with some of those hotels that we do get revenue from them because some of those rooms are rented out on a nightly basis, a transient basis. So
Okay,
we are including them because on
get
occasion they
revenue.
are paying lodging tax revenue, and I think that's only fair.
okay, I agree. Thank you.
I'll let Lydia jump in on the
Sure.
second and third questions.
Lydia Briggy for the record. Luckily, we just completed the dining guide not very long ago, so we actually did a ton of legwork of making sure that we have all of the restaurants up to date. And we can thank Shauna in the office for a lot of that. We have only included unique to Carson restaurants for this go around, so that doesn't include our Olive Garden or Applebee's or chain restaurants like that. We wanted the unique experience, and that also just time-wise and amount of information just helped us dwindle it down so it wasn't so overwhelming for guests too, for visitors. And the lodging, and I think Dave tackled that pretty well.
Right, I want to make sure we're being fair. Maybe there's a way on the dining page to say, if you want to add your restaurant, contact us, or at least put an easy spot on that website so that even if, because I get that, people talk about chain restaurants and versus our local flavor, but a lot of those chain restaurants are franchises that are locally owned and locally managed, and the people that work there are locals. And I just don't want to miss an opportunity to include a restaurant if they want to get included, and at least putting that caveat on the bottom gives them an opportunity to reach out to you.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you have a mechanism for that
Yes.
to happen, right, Dave?
That'll sort of be our phase two with the launch of .biz, when we go out and we do the training and we sit down and we have
Yes,
meetings.
but in the phase one section, I can't imagine we can't put a sentence or
Certainly,
two
to
on the
reach
bottom
out.
of that page, that
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
your business is not listed and you'd like it, please contact the Carson,
Yeah.
Tourism Authority.
And we can certainly do that. And again, it was just a matter of resources because we only had Lydia until Jess came aboard.
Yeah, I got
But
it.
yeah, we will add that on the bottom of
I don't
those
suspect you'll
pages.
get a lot of people, but at least we've made an effort to let someone who's looking at that know that if they want to get included, they can reach out to you and get included.
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. We've been mulling that over for a while, whether or not to include them or how to include them. So I think that will definitely solve the problem.
Any other questions on website?
If there are no other questions, if we can transition over to logo, and obviously this has been very consuming for, I think, the last 6 or 7 weeks. Again, hats off to the whole CTA team. I've had everybody on staff involved in looking at these different iterations and designs and really appreciated their feedback. KPS3 has been very patient with us through the multiple iterations of the logos. I was even doing some in-person research intercepts last week at NTA as well, reaching out and talking with other DMOs, hoteliers, attractions, state-level people as well, looking for some feedback and just making sure we're on the right track in terms of what you all are going to see here in the next few minutes. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Andy.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to jump into the research that informed our logo and brand. And so just as a reminder, we really had two target audiences. One being really the older weekday travelers, the boomers, and then the second being the millennial families. And so with the target audience and with the boomers and the way that they travel, it's a little bit different than what we would expect and anticipate from the millennials. With the older weekday travelers, they really enjoy and value relaxation. They like rejuvenation. They do tours. They love sightseeing. And really the key element of that is that they love spending time with family. And so that is a core element of when they travel and why they travel. In addition to that, they do travel for longer days. And so that was something that we also found during the research, is that we saw people that were actually going into Tahoe. They were on their, fourth or fifth day and then heading down through Carson City to Virginia City because they had been and experienced Tahoe for so long they needed to get away. So we saw that come through even our primary research as well. When we looked at some of the logos that the boomer generation really identifies with, it's really interesting. So the favorite brands they speak of to the glory days of their Woodstock Summer of Love youth, but don't remind them of how long ago that was. And so when we look at these from UPS to Home Depot to Lowe's, it's interesting because this is the group that is known for how much hard work that they've done and that they've put on. And so knowing that it's also related to home improvement and being able to look at brands that really have that ability to get things done, I think that absolutely makes sense. Hershey's is a little bit of the outlier, but it is a brand that has been tried and true. It's been around for many, many years, and a lot of these are established brands outside of Amazon, which is relatively, if you want to call it new to the market, but outside of these, it is more on the digital front.
I did want to pause for a moment too, because we're looking at their logos, but truly what we're speaking to is the brand that they've created. So we're not saying that this audience necessarily loves the Hershey's logo. It's very simple. There's not much to it, but it's really the brand that they've cultivated around that, the feeling that you get when you see that. And that's truly what we focused on and what all of this research really informed when we were building the Carson City brand. And then also this is all research that we maybe have seen before. We saw it in the guiding principles document, but we just wanted to bring it back and refresh it a little bit so that you could see what was really informing our creative brief when we were developing the logo.
Mm-hmm. And then moving over to millennial families. So the millennials themselves, they would rather pay for an experience versus pay for a product. So we see that is something that is tried and true. They're really looking for experience. They look at the Instagrammability of a destination when choosing a destination because they want that unique picture that they can share with their friends. And so when we're looking at these families that like to go off and do their own things and have their own experiences, they're also bringing their families with them. So we see this audience have 5-year-olds and younger be a part of that. I myself included. My kids have seen more of the world they have at age 5 than I have when I was 25. And so, but that's an experience that I wanted them to have. And so it's that ability to get them well-cultured, being able to see things from different angles, and that's really where the millennial audience lives. But when we look at, again, the brand side of things, we see a different type of at least feeling when we look at these types of logos and brands. So Nike, Adidas, Target, Old Navy, H&M, these are brands that have been around for years, but there's still a freshness to them. They're still trying to push the limits. I mean, if we look at Nike and recently what they've done with Colin Kaepernick, they're still edgy to try to do new things to keep their brand fresh. And a lot of that, there's an energy about them, and that could be just all the industry that they're in with fashion, with sports, and so forth. And so that's probably where we see that energy. So now looking at some of the surveys and interviews as we had asked, and we did quite a bit of primary research when we did this. So we went through the survey and surveyed about 20 to 30 people of stakeholders within Carson City. And then we also had about 10 interviews that were about 30 minutes long for each person. And so when we went through the survey, we had asked about the logo, and the feedback that we got back were things of like, the star reminds me of Texas. It's very basic and looks too political. Not sure what it signifies. And that was for the current logo. And then when we discussed this on our one-on-one interviews. One person couldn't even picture what that logo was right then, and so it wasn't memorable. That experience wasn't memorable. The other one, which I think is also interesting, the logo doesn't work. We don't have those mountains. Those are Minden and Gardnerville. That's not us. And then in addition to that, destination analysts also came and did their research specifically across our large email group. So this was surveying 20,000 people. So I think we had a few hundred responses from them. And so they had a very diverse view of what Carson City. So 68% had historic when they talked about Carson City, 43% affordable, 40% welcoming. And then one of the questions was, what's the most highly rated aspects of Carson City as a place to visit? The first one was scenic beauty, the second, historical attributes, the third, ambiance and atmosphere. And then the affordability and safety, I think, is a big piece, especially for those millennial families. But we can see that from scenic beauty, from history, from just the welcomeness of the community, all those play into where we are currently headed for the overall brand.
So on top of that primary and secondary research, we have our own set of principles that we work within when we're developing any sort of logo. And we really go back time and time again to these 5 points for logo design because it is so subjective, but these are kind of our tried and true to make sure that what we are developing is going to be effective and lasting. So those kind of 5 points we have are, is it appropriate for our audiences? Is it easy to describe? You can't really remember or recall something that is complex. We call it kind of the doodle test. If I were to explain it to you, could you doodle it? Could somebody draw it based off of your explanation? Is it timeless? We don't want to be following a trend. We want to be setting a trend. Simplicity. Simplicity and scalability kind of come into the same realm. So we want to make sure that this will look good on everything from a pen to a billboard, essentially. So we run it through a lot of different mock-ups and tests. A lot of these will show you through the remainder of this presentation to make sure that we are also nailing the simplicity and the scalability. We did pull quite a few, a smattering of logos from around the country, and these are top destinations. And just to kind of look at what other people are doing, not to say that these are logos that I would endorse or say are good, but just to get a sampling of what other destinations are using. So Visit Tallahassee, they're really relying on a feeling that's warm and a nice warm orange color and, that script that's kind of feels a little Southern hospitality. Then you see something like Boston that has so many iconic things within it. And so I think actually this is really where we went with our final mark too, was that you can't really capture everything about the city in something like an icon. So what we're seeing is really a lot of people going to more of this word mark. There's only a couple that really rely on some sort of icon or that extra design element. Nashville, they own the Music City space. Sacramento, obviously being the capital, threw the star in there. And then Phoenix looks like they were getting maybe some of the feedback that they wanted some outdoor or something that to show their landscape, that maybe they're mountainous, but ended up going with something that is arguably a little bit generic, which is sometimes the problem that you run into because you don't want feedback like, those aren't my mountains, but you want to be showing something that indicates outdoor. So that was just a little bit of what we were looking at too when we were researching other destinations and seeing if that could inform anything that we were moving forward.
And I would also add to that these aren't just destinations, these are also capital cities as well. And so, I think looking at Sacramento, they definitely leaned in on the star. But even with Boston, that I think is one of the most historic places that you can visit in our nation. And yet their look and feel is really, I would say, more artistic than anything else.
So we do have a lot of brand along with this logo design. Of course, we want to show you the mark that we want to move forward with, but we also want to show you how that works in the context of everything else we're doing. Also, in the timeline that we developed this in, we did website first. So we did guiding principles, and that really directed us to how we wanted to design the website, which then informed how we built out that logo and developed that mark. So it all kind of ends up being this holistic package. And logo is such a small part of it that it just makes sense to revisit our brand pillars, for example, which is our rich history, our heritage and cultural influence, and inclusive community. We are family friendly, and we have room to discover and wander. When we were developing these, we said we would go back to them time and time again, and we have. We kind of make that our litmus test of, are we checking the boxes on all of these, and does it really fit within this, to make sure that we are not alienating one audience or another. And then just revisiting our brand promise that we developed as well. Carson City is the heart of Nevada. Through our warm greetings, our rich history, and our diverse, majestic landscapes, Carson City is a place you want to stay. It holds the heartbeat of Nevada and is where our Western history was forged. We are the center point of the Nevada experience. And with that, we have our logo that we have revealed. So I just want to read kind of this lengthy paragraph about it while we have this up. But how we got here. Again, we are the heart of Nevada, and our logo is the heart of our brand. But it doesn't stand alone. It gets meaning from the design, but more importantly, from everything that surrounds it. Our words, our images, our website, and our voice and tone all add context and meaning to our logo, and one doesn't live without the other. As we embarked on this logo design, we, like our great city, evolved. We became bolder. We became simpler, and we became more focused on that pioneering spirit. We are a guide to digging deeper and exploring further, because in the end, our history has merged with our forward-thinking community, and no matter what the future holds, Carson City is ready to lead the way. So some of the descriptors around this mark, teamwork, thank you, are that we are bold, simple, pioneering. It has that sense of old meets new. I'll get into it a little bit when we do a little breakdown of everything that went into the compass. But being a pocket compass and specifically choosing that type of mark within it was important to us. Also being reliable, that is the thing that every pioneer or explorer has in their back pocket or iPhone or anything, is that compass. And it's also very welcoming. It truly positions us as a guide, and that compass mark positions us as a destination. And I think the important thing is that it also differentiates us from something that might feel city or municipal. And that was why, when we were throwing out icons or something of that nature, and of course the Capitol comes into mind, that's something that we really hang our hats on, but we know that other city logos also have that type of representation in them. So I think for tourism and for vacationing, it really feels like it works as that destination mark. So moving on, this is our litmus test. We went over these taglines at the last board meeting, but we wanted to make sure, does this work on something like paired with an outdoor image? So recharging your Western spirit. And again, we have it as logos mostly show up, smaller toward the bottom, and really just reinforcing the message that we're putting out there with our photography and with our words. Where history lives and adventure awaits. So making sure that next to a photo of the Capitol feels right and it feels good and directionally is correct. And then even with something like our heritage, Carson City is the heart and history of Nevada. So I think it's important to see it, again, with that vibrant photography we have, if this ends up looking like a Facebook cover photo or a brochure cover, something of that nature, that it's still on point with no matter what we would like to pair it with. This is the full color palette that we've developed. So the logo itself is that kind of deep navy blue paired with the burnt orange, and we do that because that color pairing in particular has a high contrast value and just looks really appealing. But we did pull in several secondary colors, and those were really influenced by the natural color palette that we see around Carson City. So it's the fall leaves and Nevada sunsets. It's the turquoise color of Tahoe and of the stone. It's full-grown trees and sage. We were discussing that Carson City really in this neck of northern Nevada really owns that full-grown neighborhood tree line that you don't typically see in Reno or even up in Tahoe. They don't grow like that there, so I think that's something that we really own. And then, of course, that more royal bright blue, which we know as Nevada Pride here, and then also our bluebird skies. So this slide really represents the anatomy of the logo. So the logo uses a type treatment with the compass icon embedded in the O of Carson. The simplicity makes it easy to replicate in a wide range of materials from billboards to business cards, as I mentioned. And its simplicity is what makes it timeless and also ensures we're not speaking to one single interest. That font in particular is also very modern. We made a couple modifications to it that are pretty subtle, the T and the Y connecting to make sure that we're putting a little customization to it, really, and that we are kind of going with more of this modern feel with our brand moving forward. One thing that I think falls by the wayside but is very important to this logo redesign was adding visit. And again, reinforcing that is a destination logo. And then our NV not only makes sure that visitors will know exactly where Carson City is, or at least which state we are in, but it also appeals to some of that local Nevada pride. So when we do start thinking merchandising or this going on to sponsorship items, that also has some appeal to our local audiences. And then, of course, the compass positions Carson City again as a destination to be explored. It reinforces that we are a guide, whether it be for adventure, history, or whatever type of experience our visitors would like to have here. It's modeled after a pocket compass. I did a lot of research around compasses. So it's not a marine compass or a prismatic compass or an astro compass. It's a pocket compass, which is, what Lewis and Clark had when they explored the western frontier. So the simplicity of that really speaks to kind of that history as well, which I think ties in really nicely. When we think about the modern logo use, they truly are living. Most of what we see now are on devices, are on videos that we're watching on Instagram, and that's really how brands are connecting with their audiences. So we would like to explore different ways of basically animating this logo, and then that is a way to bring in more specifically other brand pillars. So if we wanted to start with a star and that morphs into something else, we'd like to explore ways to do that. And Andy, if you want to jump into those samples, because it's kind of hard to describe, but you can just see, with a little After Effects, animation there, you can start to see how we can take elements of that logo and really bring them to life. So that one's a simple one. This, you can see how it kind of just animates in. It starts as one shape and then goes to their final form. And then in that last one, I think this is a Firefox version. So they break down icons that they basically made as their sub-companies, but you get the gist of it, how it could basically take on that same style and morph, and then we rest on our final logo mark that we move forward with. So we wanted to make sure that this was going to work on all of our marketing materials that we're developing. How does it look when it's next to the Travel Nevada logo? What is it going to look like on the visitor guide? So this is an ad that we actually have a form of this running that we've placed in media already. So that was kind of our first place we went, is does this look good on the print ads that we've already have in circulation? And I think you can see it's certainly bold next to that Travel Nevada logo. Additionally, rolling it out on our website, we would take some time to make sure that this is reworked and fits appropriately. in that website header, since it was definitely built around the existing logo that we had. But, what does it look like on the website? And then what does it look like when we're passing out stickers and have them in our shop and people are putting them on their laptops and, wearing that with pride. So kind of seeing that, how I have my space dedicated on my laptop for when that rolls out. This is a banner ad series, so making sure that it also, we can roll it out in a marketing campaign and that it fits well into the messaging that we have. And one of the lines that we really glommed onto was that Nevada's heart beats here, and what if that became a campaign, and does that logo support that stance? And then additionally, visitor guide. So this is another one. This is the cover that we're looking at moving forward with, and making sure that that fits into the materials that we're also tasked with developing this year. Once we put it on banners and start putting it into the community, does it connect? So we wanted to make sure that we were thinking through how it'll be visible in and around town as well. And then another additional element to the brand overall is the icons that we've been using. So using those in the visitor guide, you'll see them on the website, and it all just is pieces that come together to make that full picture. Trade shows are also a huge element that we will need to have a strong brand presence for. So showing that, yes, it works on outdoor, but it's also applies really nicely when we're trying to tout something more along the lines of our historic brand pillar. So having that history of the Capitol building on the back. And of course, this is all just us having fun with this and exploring the different executions that we can take. Maybe there's a water bottle that's a part of a giveaway within that, and we bring in that topo map style, and just looks really, really clean when you have it both on the light background and on the dark background. That's something that's important to mention as well. And then maybe we'd have a half pipe contest or something.
And I want to thank Member Santos for allowing us to take that picture of him on the skateboard. Thank you.
Action shots. And then, of course, the billboard we're talking about. So it works pretty effectively there. And I think the important takeaway is that it does feel like a destination. It feels like a spot that you want to learn more about and to travel to. And next steps for us will really be to refine this and hone it in. So our entire team is working together to make sure mostly that compass reads correctly. So we're looking at a couple executions, which is very normal in our process. We make sure that we're directionally taking the right path, that this is, constructually 95% there, and then we go back and take the time to refine it and just make sure that that is completely correct. And we're all 100% on board with that.
Okay. I'll start. I really like the boldness and how you've tried to bring the young and the old with the way the lettering, the block lettering for the older. I like the colors and how it interacts with our current website. They still play off each other. I really like the scalability when applying it to different applications. Whether it's a hat, I think that works. And probably the thing I like the most of it, it keeps coming back to visit Carson City. And I like the fact that you put Nevada in there too. I like the compass idea. When you say refine,
Mm-hmm.
I think the compass could use a little work. That would be my only comment that I've I get, if you're a millennial, you probably know that's the compass emoji. But if you're not, you might be going, I don't know, is there a hurricane coming to Carson? But I think, you're 95% there, at least in my opinion. I like what you've done. I don't know how the other board members feel, but hear your comments.
I'm just impressed that you knew what an emoji was. That's just good job. Yeah. at first blush when I got this, because we just saw it today, and obviously David and staff has seen it before, but I wasn't all that enamored with it, I have to say. But as your presentation progressed, the simplicity of it and the rollout of it in its various forms, it grew on me. I mean, I can envision it in all of those spots. It isn't overly complicated, which I think our last one was. I'm looking at it, it's back there on the wall, on that window still. And it doesn't say visit, it just, you don't know what it is. You don't know what it is. So I think when you see this, you know that it's Carson City, Nevada, and you know that the idea is that you should come here. And so I by the end of the presentation, I liked it. I don't know that I would change anything. I don't know how much more you could refine that compass, really, without mucking it up or making it overly complicated, but
No.
that's it for me.
I've seen it a little more than a day now. I've
Yeah.
had more time, and I was with you. When I first saw it, I was like, I kind of didn't get it. I thought it was too simple. But then the more I looked at it, the more I just kept coming back. It says what we want.
Yeah.
And it's simple, and it's not complicated, and like you said, like the older.
Who the heck are you pointing at?
It has Carson City there, but it doesn't say much.
Okay.
But no, I agree.
Yeah, I like that it pops, and I agree. As the presentation went on, what sold it for me is when you put it on banners and billboards, and I'm a visual guy, so when I saw what it looks like on those different formats, I thought it really brought it together, and especially the banners around town, because I think when people see that, and then they go to our website, they're gonna go, oh, I saw that. And it's gonna make it easier for them to navigate the website. So I think you guys did an outstanding job, and I like that it's right there, it's simple, and I think it's gonna work. I like it, thank you.
I think it's important that you got the Nevada in there, because as we know, we've watched comedians out on the street. A lot of people in the US don't even know we have 50 states, so they certainly don't know capitals or where cities are. So I think that's one of the biggest keys, the visit and then the state, so people actually know what we're talking about. So I think it's great.
Coming, my opinion, as a printer and understanding the scalability and the purpose, at first I was like, but you got the simplicity. I mean, it truly says what it's supposed to say, and it does work. And I really do appreciate you giving us all those different layouts showing the billboard and all the other things, because it really does make a difference. It grew on me a whole lot more.
Well, I got to give Linda behind me here credit for the NV. So she noticed that was missing, and she's like, "What are you doing? It's Carson City, Nevada. Where's the NV?" So thank you, Linda, for that. Yeah, and a lot of work has went into this, as I said, a lot of iterations, a lot of feedback from several individuals, and appreciate the staff and KPS3 putting up with me too, with all my little changes that I wanted to see. So thank you for that feedback, everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like we're all on the same page. You say refine, refine, refine. Maybe a little more refining. It sounds like everybody understands the compass and what the emoji means. And thanks, Stacy, for giving me credit to knowing what it. Now I can just go back to kicking kids off my lawn like the old guy.
And you're Afghan, Afghan.
But
Actually, that was a compliment, because I didn't know it. Is that an emoji compass or close to one? 'Cause I didn't even know there was an emoji compass. So, at least I do know what an emoji is, but I didn't know there was an emoji compass.
Yeah, I would say emojis are just easy to replicate, and
Okay.
easy to identify.
just-
So it's our Carson City emoji
Okay.
now.
I don't speak emoji.
We better
Can I-
trademark this.
Can I make one comment about the website? So I know we're kind of past that, but I'd like to see a spot on that website for staff to be listed, and maybe a little bit about staff and who to contact and know what they do, because I think it's important, because people will often, from other locations, look to see who can I contact, who can I find for more information, and I know that our current site doesn't have that, and I think that's a critical thing to
Blame me
have.
for that. Just from personal experience before, we're going to have it on the .biz site for sure. And I definitely would like to have that contact page. Sometimes that can create issues if you have your bios and your pics of when we're in a public office space when they come in. Sometimes it can garner some not so welcome people sometimes. I think also just from a woman's perspective. So that I requested that it not be on there, but definitely some sort of contact information. So maybe some limited information, I would be super happy.
Well, it doesn't have to be, pictures, it doesn't have to be your home phone number, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be your address, but.
Just who to contact about what.
We are all public servants, and I believe very strongly in making our availability known to people as a public servant. I feel very strongly about that. So I'd like to see if we can find a way to compromise and not feel like we're damaging your safety. I can appreciate that. But I think we should find a way to
And I think we can.
at least put a
absolutely.
name or an email address or an office
Oh, sure.
phone number on there. Because I think it's important for people to be able to find the right person
Mm-hmm.
when they're looking for who they want to contact. So I feel pretty strongly about that.
If I
Agree.
could just jump in, so next month, I don't want to get ahead on the agenda, but next month we'll actually be laying out visit carsоncity.biz, and you'll actually see how that whole section looks for not only staff, but also all of you as well as board members. So I think we could compromise and maybe have a link that goes over to that page from the .com and then takes you into the .biz version, which is normally where that type of information for DMOs or state tourism offices exist. It is typically on the industry partner section of a website if it's consumer facing, or if you have two sites, it would sit over on a biz site. But I think we can definitely do that and still get you from .com over to our staff.
I'll reserve judgment then until I see it.
I just wanted to clarify on the current .com, sorry, the one that's launching next week, there is a contact us in the footer. So that will be on the .com site, and we can definitely expand upon that.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns, questions? Well, thanks very
Appreciate
much.
the time.
Good
Thank you, guys.
presentation.
Gracias.
We're running a little behind, so we'll keep moving as fast as we can. Item 9, discussion and possible action regarding the CTA statement of accounts. David?
Thank you, Chair Jones. In your packets, you have the invoice listing for the accounts payable checks totaling $86,852.85 for October 2019 for your approval. I'll just hit a couple of highlights on here, and then if there are any questions, just take any questions. So on that first page, you will see the Eide Bailey and the McLeod Watts charges. So those are for the fiscal 19 audit, and then the final billing, it will come in this month. So the total that we'll end up paying will be $10,290. If you go down to the two Department of Taxation payments, those are for fiscal month collections for July and August. So that's the 3/8 of 1% that we remit to the state. Geography Creative, this is the contract with Laura Visconti. So she handles all of our influencers, or the majority of the influencers underneath her contract, and we work through her to pay all those folks when they're coming and to Carson City and then writing about us. This is a grant project, just to remind everyone. So the grants are funding half of that project, and this is for this entire fiscal year's worth of work. The Jeffrey Dow, that was the photographic portion, the video and the drone components of the photo shoot that we did a month and a half or so ago. And then KPS3 charges, again, content development, the new brand development, which is the work on the logo, and then the web development that we've all just seen here today. On page 3 of 4, we have the Konica Minolta charges. So again, that's the monthly base costs to have the big printer in the back room. And then a Carlisle, that was for the visitor guide brochure printing, the small ones, I think, Lydia, yeah. And it's just, we didn't get the invoice from them until way after we printed. But that was also on the grant side as well, as a grant-funded project, so. With that, I'll entertain any questions that you all may have about any of the other items.
Questions from the board?
No.
Concerns? All right. A motion?
I move to approve the CTA account activity statements of accounts payable checks for October 2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. On to item 10, discussion and possible action regarding approval, the adjusted CTA fiscal year 20 budget report. David again?
Thank you, Chair Jones. In your packet, you all have a comparative statement of the adjusted revenue totaling $776,485.58, expenses totaling $477,290.50, and a fund balance for all CTA funds totaling $1,860,894.58. And I'll hit the highlights on this as well. And it's just a couple. The only change that we've actually made on page 2 is on the fiscal 20 actual carryover amounts. Those are based on the final audit that you all heard last month. So those are the updated figures, those first 3 lines in yellow, pink, and blue. Just as a reminder, we're at fourth period from an accounting perspective, which is through October for our expenses. And for the revenues, it's all of the payments or the remittances that we've received through the end of October, but that's really September, physical business month of activity, right? So we've got 4 months of expenditures and 3 months of collections. So we're actually doing well, all things considered, on the revenue side, because we're 33% of the year through October. And again, our 3 months of collections are sitting at about 31.5% of what our projected budget was when we set that last fiscal year for this fiscal year. So with that, if you could turn to page 3, you can see we've made the July and August payments at the top there to the state, 3/8 of 1%, as well as the 1% that funds arts and culture as well for July and August. And then if you turn to page 4, the plan is for us to walk through the first 6 months of expenditures. I want to get us halfway through the year. So in January, once we get all the bills for expenditures through December, I'll sit down with Chris and the team, and then we'll go about making the adjustments necessary on this particular document. We'll have to true some things up with travel, as I think I've mentioned before, just based on the grants that we did receive in June. So we didn't know what we were actually going to do in terms of the final grant request at the time that this budget was due to taxation, right? So we need to do some true up in there, especially for some of the shows that we received the grant funding for, NTA, Go West Summit, and things of that nature. So that will be our plan. So I think probably will come in the February meeting, with some updates in terms of our projections for fiscal 20. So that second column where it says FY20 projection. So with that, page 5, again, that's just the summary page for taxation that does reflect the changes we made to the carryover amounts based on the fiscal 19 audit now being completed. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Hey, Dave, on page 4, just so you clarify, so everybody knows, on the insurance, under other services, 9,000, that's paid through the year, right? That's for the whole year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for the annual policy, I guess, is the way I would describe that. So
Right.
yeah, little over what we had budgeted, but I spoke with Brendan with the insurance company, and we will work with him maybe mid to late January to assess what premiums look like so we can more closely forecast. I mean, I know we're only talking a couple $100, but that's something that we're going to work with him on to narrow down our projection for the next fiscal year's policy amount.
Yeah, I just wanted the rest of the board to know. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
we talked about it, but I just
Yes.
wanted to clarify.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
I do have a question really quick on the special events, trade shows. So the trade show does not reflect any grants that we got or what we're doing for next year? Is that what you were saying, David?
For next year, as in the second half of this fiscal year?
Correct.
Yes, I think that's the case. And Chris and I need to double check that. We know that there's $1,000 in here under trade shows as well on page 4. And I'm thinking because we attended Global Tourism Summit, but because we sponsored, how we account for that sponsorship, it works a little bit different in terms of the accounting, but we received a booth. So as a part of our sponsorship, we didn't have to pay for a booth in that case. So we kind of have to tweak this a little bit based on if we get something at no cost or because it was a part of a sponsorship. So, but that's the plan, yeah.
Okay.
And you are correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't tell you exactly how much we're off, but that is part of the issue was the grants.
As long as we're going to shows, that's
Oh, my goodness, oh, yeah.
my key thing on
Yeah,
that.
no,
so-
staff, we've got
Yep.
great training and so, yeah, and I'll talk about NTA, but then Go West coming up and, yeah,
Perfect.
yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions, concerns about the budget? All right, if I can get a motion.
I'll make the motion. I move to approve the adjusted fiscal year 20 budget report as presented through October 31st, 2019.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. On to item 11, non-action items for presentation and discussion only. Director update, David?
Thank you, Chair Jones. So if you look at that lady next to Lydia, she's been sitting here very patiently for the last hour and a half. I'm pleased to introduce Jessica Wheel, who is our new multimedia content coordinator, and she hails from the state of Michigan. I know she would want you all to know that. But I'll let Jess just give you a little bit of background about herself, but I got to tell you, she came right into the middle of this logo development and logo work. And again, the whole staff really appreciate their input and feedback, but she jumped right in. Lydia wasn't even here when we had a meeting and I said, hey, we're gonna be making some decisions without your boss. And she kind of freaked out initially. And then she realized, oh, you know what, I got this. And she jumped right in and had some great constructive feedback for KPS3. So I'm very happy that she's on board. And with that, I'll let you give a little background if you'd like about yourself.
It was a very warm welcome. Hi, everyone. I am Jess Wheel. I'm here to support Carson City as the destination. I have a background in photography, video, graphic design, and more to come. So thanks for having me here today.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome,
Good
Jess.
to have you on board.
Thanks.
Excellent. With that, I wanted to let the board know last week the Nevada Commission on Tourism reviewed almost 100 grant applications, or requests, I should say, totaling about $814,000, with only $302,000 available to issue out. And as such, some of the grants were not funded at all, and others were significantly reduced across the board. For our special events marketing grant, we received $5,000 of the $15K that we had requested. And then with the web usability grant, we did not receive any funding at all for that. So that's just an update in terms of the second cycle fiscal 20 Commission on Tourism grant marketing program for us. And then on the projects related to tourism grant, we are still working, collective team effort here for Kit Carson Trail for the sandstone, carriage stone markers and the installation. I met with Lee Plemmel a couple weeks ago regarding medallions, and I'm super happy to say that he actually has buckets of the old medallions, I guess, that were pulled out of the concrete some time ago, which is going to be a huge savings to us after seeing how much those medallions cost. And he's been kind enough to let us use what we want. And I believe, off the top of my head, I think there are 6 different designs. So we're actually going to be able to kind of work those designs based on the home or the building that we'll have the marker in front of. So that's been great. Lee and the whole planning team has been wonderful to work with. And then in addition, Dirk Goring with Public Works is sort of going to be our liaison, our contact on the Public Works side of things. So if we don't get a meeting with him this week, it'll somehow be over the holidays. It's just pending everyone's kind of vacation schedules at this point. And then, give, again, Linda full credit here. I mean, she put together, we're trying to narrow down this tour as we kind of reimagine it to maybe 20, 25 locations, right? An hour and a half, 2 hours. Linda has been busting her butt to come up with what she thinks is a perfect kind of match and fit for those 20 to 25 locations. We also have been working with Debbie Lane at the Carson City Historical Society as well. She has put together a list of what she thinks are the most appropriate homes for the shortened tour, not the full build out on the website. So a lot going on, a lot of collaboration, which I'm grateful for, and we'll get this thing figured out so we can get our grant application in January 17th for what we're doing with the infrastructure side of the Kit Carson Trail. So quick update on all things grants. Switching gears, NTA, National Tour Association, super successful last week at the NTA appointment show, and I couldn't be happier with James' performance. Amazing. He put a lot of work into preparing for the 23 appointments, the one-on-one appointments. I just basically walked around, held his briefcase for him. I got him little miniature Coke cans every time he was getting thirsty from talking so much. He was amazing during the appointments, and I appreciate the effort and the preparation that he put in to get me up to speed as well with the different companies that we were meeting with. Tuesday morning, saw James conduct 2 sales mission style presentations. So I believe we had about 18 total, I think 8 and 10 in the 2 sessions. We were fortunate to have John Meyer from the LVCVA, who's the sales executive down there, kind of take over this particular part because Travel Nevada was not at NTA. So we presented with the RSCVA and then Reno Tahoe territory in one session, and then I believe it was sort of the Laughlin, Mesquite, Las Vegas, and Elko was in the other session, right? So we did a couple of repeat sessions. He was a rock star, so I have a little bit of video of him. I don't know if he knows that or not, and I was taking pictures up there. So it was really good to get Carson City back on the map with these tour operators, in terms of we're here, front and center with the motor coach operators. We met with people throughout the US, Canada. We had great responses and reactions overall from the operators who were very excited to hear about some of the new opportunities and the product that we have coming online with the Stewart Cultural Center and Museum, the rail bikes, big hit with these folks. And then nobody knew about the Battleborn Hall exhibit that opened in October of 2018 over at the Capitol. So, and I also want to give a really big thanks to the RSCVA, so Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. Mike, Art, Tammy, and Tracy, they allowed us to have space on their table in their booth to put our materials out, and I'm happy to say we tore through all the lip balm, a lot of stickers, pins, and some of our one-sheeters and collateral as well. So I think it was a really good experience. I'm glad that I went, so I can see the fun that James will have moving forward each year that I won't. But I'm excited because next year NTA is coming to Reno in November 15th to the 19th. I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity for us to showcase Carson City based on a pre-conference site seeing tour that we'll have specific, again, to Carson City. Plus, our conversations over the week last week, we may also have the ability to host tour operators here for an overnight, pre or post NTA, the conference, and I'm not sure what that looks like, right? A lot of work that we have to do with the state, with the RSCVA as well. In addition, I think we need to look at a partnership with the RSCVA as well as our fellow DMOs here up in Northern Nevada, and that also includes Tom Lester and Katie Niedenrep over in Elko. I think it'll just do wonders for these folks who haven't been in Carson City in 5, 6, 7 years, as James and I were being told. We have a totally different city, as James was doing a great job of explaining to them with everything that's happened downtown and restaurants and just new product development, attraction development here. So the one thing, though, I just want to caution everyone. I think as we get back into this market, this is definitely a long-term commitment. As we heard from these folks, they're looking at product development for calendars 21, 22, and beyond. Right, so this is we're not, motor coaches aren't going to show up in January, right? I mean, this is a long-term game that we need to be in this game. So those are just a few highlights. I'll leave it at that because James is going to do a recap at the January meeting, and we'll get into this a little deeper. So any questions on that before I kind of switch gears?
No, but I think you're right when you mentioned it's a game we've been out of. And it's tourism for Carson is no different than it's a sales pitch, right? And typically you go and you pitch your sale and you don't see results probably for 2 years. But we're back on the map, and I think you heard from people down there that they'd kind of forgot about Carson City. I don't know if that's a fair statement.
Very fair
But
statement.
just because we
Yeah.
we didn't put ourselves out there, so
No,
I think
no.
these things are important.
Yeah, and I think there's some great opportunities. I don't want to steal what James might talk about in January, but with a company out of Sacramento, they're looking to do something specific around American Indian experience, right? So Stewart, with everything that's going on out there, the rail bikes is going to be potentially a really cool thing with the train tied in as well. So just given the fact that you have to go all the way, where's it, Mendocino, I think is the closest one physically to us. So I think we've got some really cool opportunities along those lines. So if I can switch gears, international, Travel Nevada is going to be bringing 9 Chinese tour operators to Northern Nevada after Active America China in San Diego next, I think it's kind of the end of March, the first part of April. So later this week, we will get an RFQ out to hotel properties to see if one of our hotels would be willing to host this particular group for a night. I think it's a great opportunity. Again, this would be an overnight visit beyond the day trips that we've been doing with the Chinese tour operators. So everything so far that we've had has been day trips, right? Bringing folks in, and I've been not pushing back, but saying, hey, really like to get these folks overnight to experience our lodging product that we have here. So I'll keep the board apprised of the process and the result of that RFQ. If everything kind of falls out the way, I hope it falls out over the holidays at the January meeting. And then sticking with the international visitor, so as James and I were working out some of the details on the Chinese tour operator visit, an opportunity was floated regarding International Powwow, which of course is next May, at the end of May, to possibly host Japanese tour operators here in Carson City. It's a great market for us. I was there last year on behalf of the state with the Capitol Complex, the museums, again, the Stewart Indian School. As such, Travel Nevada has put us in touch with Visit USA Japan, and we're going to see what a post-IPW FAM to Carson City looks like. So expect some neat things, I think, to come on the Japanese market front as well. And then lastly, I just want to remind the board and everyone listening, tomorrow from 3 to 6 is the soft grand opening of the Stewart Cultural Center and Museum out at the Stewart Indian campus. So if you get a chance, please swing by. And Linda provided each of you with kind of a one-sheeter that James and I were using at NTA last week just to talk about what Stewart is and the new components of the experience out there. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions that the board may have.
Questions on anything Dave has brought forward?
Sounds good.
You want to move quickly to the transient occupancy report, and we can.
Okay, thank you, Chair Jones. I'll be brief because I know we're on a clock here. This is for the month of September. So what I'll do is hit the highlights, and then if there are any specific questions, we were down a little bit. September over September, 1.76%, just under $40,000 for the month. I'll skip down to the bottom, just in the interest of time. RevPAR was off a little bit. That does have to do with rooms being offline at certain properties in the 6 to 13 category last September as opposed to this September. So that kind of plays into the revenue per available room. But the positive that I think we should all take away on this first page is ADR was up again. So if you look in that upper right on page 1 of 2, top 5 properties, a little over $5 actually for the 6 to 13 as well, but 4.5% and 8.3% increases month to month, year over year for the month of September. So again, the properties are doing a really good job of increasing rates, and we're getting it. So on the backside, page 2 of 2, there's still a little bit of a drop in terms of room nights occupied. If you look at top 5 and top 6 to 13, I know some of this has to do again with sort of the shifting of where number 5 and number 6 fit in because they change right, from any given month, right? So in terms of comparing last year, the top 5 was different than the top 5 of this year. So that does impact these numbers that you see on here. And then again, there's a little bit of a increase in the number of 28-day room nights occupied as well at the bottom. So that also adjusts the counts in the rooms, right, in terms of whether or not we get any reporting from a particular hotel or not. So one month they may be on because they had transient room nights. Following year, nothing. It's all 28-day stay, in which case then they come off and those rooms go down to that 28-day line. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board may have on this particular report.
Any questions on the occupancy report? Item C, future agenda items. David, anything or you request for future items?
Yeah, I'll be brief about January. So in January, All World Sports will be coming in to talk about softball and baseball. They're going to talk about the use of the money that the board allocated last January, the $20,000 for the cooperative marketing. And they'll talk about just holistically in terms of what's going on with softball in general. In addition, they're going to talk about their plans for 2020, and that'll be a part of a single agenda item in terms of whether or not the board would like to consider that $20,000 allocation for next calendar year. So just as a reminder, the allocation is for calendar year here, not fiscal year, because of the way that they work the sports calendar. And then I'll be super excited because the website will be live, obviously, by the time we meet in January. So if the board wishes to take a little look at the live website, we can definitely do that. But from a KPS 3 perspective, we're going to be laying out visitcarsoncity.biz. And I had the privilege of seeing that 2 weeks ago, and I loved it, with the exception of a couple really, really minor changes. I think they nailed it, in terms of the feedback from all of you a few months ago when we talked about what is it that we want to see for our industry partners and the team. So with that, I'll leave it.
Next meeting is January 13th, back to our regular time at 4 o'clock. Any board comments or announcements any of the board members would like to make at this time? No. I'll ask one more time for public comment. Seeing none out there, I think we're adjourned.